Welcome to the Listen Up podcast, where we explore hearing loss, communication, connections, and health.
Hi, everybody. Dr. Mark Sims here. I'm the host of the Listen Up podcast, where I feature top leaders in healthcare. This episode is brought to you by Listen Up Hearing Center. I help patients to effectively treat their hearing loss so they can remain better connected with their friends and family and remain independent. The reason I'm so passionate about hearing loss is because I lost my brother Robbie twice. First to the hearing loss from the radiation to his brain tumor, and then later to complications from that brain tumor. I'm an E of ENT. I only treat ears. I've performed over 10,000 ear surgeries and treated many more with hearing loss. I am the founder of Listen Up Hearing Center, and I've also written a book of the same name, Listen Up, A Physician's Guide to Effectively Treating Your Hearing Loss. If you want to learn more about it, go to www.listenuphearing.com. I'm really excited about today's guest. Today's guest is Jodi Sasaki-Miraglia. That's right, no G. She is the Director for Education and Training at the West Region of Widex, USA. She completed a double bachelor's degree in audiology and speech language pathology at University of Northern Carolina, and has a doctorate and a master's degree in audiology from Salus University. She has spent the past 18 years in her career working for a global hearing device manufacturer as a manager of education and training, manager of audiology technical support and sales support and practice management. She is proud to be an audiologist for almost 2 decades. Her past positions include a clinical audiologist at Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale, right around the corner from me, and in audiology private practice. She's a frequent guest lecturer at AUD programs and provides public outreach for hearing healthcare and presents at local and national meetings, and she appears on podcasts. Jodi was born and raised in Kona, Hawaii, is an avid spam eater, and enjoys living in Southern California with her family and her golden retriever, Rex. Hey, Jodi, thank you so much for coming on here.
Thanks, Mark.
So I want to tell you, I am a consumer of spam musubi. I lived in Hawaii for 7 years, so not born and raised, but very familiar with the beautiful island.
You're part of the club. You're part of the Hawaii club, and if you're indoctrinated in the spam musubi,
beautiful place, great to visit. I unfortunately don't get there enough. So.
Yeah.
So tell me about your. So grew up in Kona, Hawaii, kind of rural. How'd you end up deciding to become an audiologist? This will be an interesting story.
I think similar to you, right? Hearing loss hit really close home to my family. My grandfather had hearing loss growing up. So did my great grandmother, who came over from Japan before Hawaii was a 50th state. I always remember a really big BTE on the back of my great grandma's head, and always wondering, like, gosh, there must be something better than this, right? Like, if we can have
time, though.
Right. And so, little did I know, when I went to school in Colorado as an undergrad, took communication disorders as a class, I was like, I kind of like this kind of speech and hearing thing. I think, like most audiologists, many of us started in the speech pathway, realized, we really like the ears, the hearing, the balance. And once I started my studies as an audiologist after going into grad school, my grandfather had always had hearing loss. My grandfather actually was a band instructor in Hawaii, lost his hearing over time, probably from a lot of noise exposure back then, instructing the band in a big cavernous type of environment. My dad is a high school woodshop teacher, never wore hearing protection, avid hunter. And then my mom had something along the lines of mumps or measles when she was a kid, had unilateral hearing loss. Whenever we would be in noise, my mom would always say, "Come on my better side." So I always thought, like, moms had like a better ear, not knowing that my mom actually didn't have a usable ear on one side. I really do believe audiology picked me. It's very personal to me. After, this many decades, I still am very passionate about, hearing conservation, hearing loss, just hearing advocacy. And then now hopefully leading into, May, which is Better Speech and Hearing Month, just an overall awareness by your listeners tuning in to know what to do. And hearing loss is not an old person thing. Hearing loss doesn't care your age, your gender, how much money you have in your wallet. Do you have hearing loss? We know how to treat it, obviously from a clinical perspective, you from a medical perspective. And I think there's so much that we can still do to just educate the public about hearing and hearing loss.
That's great. So that's kind of a great roadmap for the things we can talk about. Let's talk a little bit about hearing conservation and kind of your take on it. I mean, obviously you are keenly aware with a band leader in the family, woodshop worker, et cetera, et cetera. So what's the prime message you try to give to people about that particular issue?
But I think the prime message is the fact that like we are born, hopefully if you have, normal anatomical structures, you're born with a really, really strong hearing, balance, communication system. And lo and behold, because of noise exposure, which is for most people fully avoidable, or, and there's just a lack of education around that. When you look at, some of the studies that are done, with the World Health Organization worldwide, millions of young people are susceptible to noise-induced hearing loss. And a lot of it has to just do with education, or not wearing headphones. With the pandemic, I think we all kind of went under headphones, but didn't realize, wow, we're under headphones 8 hours a day. And if you're going to crank it up so loud, it's not healthy for us human beings to be exposed to long levels of higher noise. So just a general education. I think we all know, hey, don't read in the dark. Hey, don't read when the lights are low. Hey, don't cross the street without looking for both sides, localization, vision, hey, brush your teeth every night. You don't want to get cavities.
Prevention. All this
prevention. And yet hearing is left off. And yet, you and I can, unfortunately see the ramifications when hearing it deteriorates, how that directly impacts communication, relationships, lifestyle.
Yeah. The big thing I always tell people is, unfortunately, we can't give it back once you lost it. Right.
Yep.
So it's
correct.
not, at this point in time, technology doesn't make it recoverable. It can be rehabilitated, but we can't recover it. So everybody has to protect it
Protect it first. Yep. Protect it first.
Yeah, it's where I'm in Arizona, there are a lot of people who like to hunt and shoot, and so there are people even with the noise-induced hearing loss who still go, but some of them are pretty smart about getting noise canceling headsets and things like that. So I assume you counsel people on that technology.
We counsel on that, and just like summertime, right? Everything's opening back up. Everybody wants to go see concerts. Everybody wants to go and hear the live music again in person. If you have to shout to your friend next to you, probably a little bit too loud. Most people have some sort of Amazon or, kind of 24-hour or 1-day delivery. You can buy musician grade hearing protection under $20. Donate 2 days worth of your Starbucks and get yourself some hearing protection. Stick it in your purse or stick it on the back of your cell phone with a little holder. And that way, when you do go to a venue, you're prepared. Because nobody, as much as those little foamy plugs are available at a lot of the rock concerts and music venues, they cut out so much sound, especially in the high tones. People would rather not wear it and then come out.
It distorts the music. So
distorts the music.
Like the sound.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I have a son who he called me because his Apple Watch told him he was in too much noise.
Yes. Yeah. So now we have all these devices that I can actually monitor how long, how loud. But yet, it doesn't matter if you don't do anything about it. Right. So in terms of hearing, prevention or just protecting your hearing for like good hearing hygiene is what I like to call it. Being able to just, get some nice, musician grade plugs, again, $20 or less. And you can still go out and do the fun stuff, but continue to protect your hearing.
Yeah. The amazing thing to me was he's in an a cappella group, and it was actually the group practices. So just human voice on a continual basis was considered a high enough exposure that he should do something about it.
Yeah.
So people think it's going to be, heavy metal or gunfire, but it can be continual sound just generated by, being around human activity, normal human activity.
Yes. Normal human activity. And then now, because we're all under headphones for a lot of the day, and we may not notice we're turning up as we go, a lot of times it is too loud. So your weekly dose exceeds quickly what a normal human being is supposed to be exposed to, regardless of age, right? I'm sure
for the listeners, there's the concept of exposure dose, not just one particular. So like a gunshot is a very short burst of a large amount, and that can be a problem. But lower volumes across a cumulative time can also be a problem to your ear.
Yes.
So, and that's actually one of the nice things about the smart devices is they can actually measure what you're exposed to.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. And so, in terms of your role, in terms of professional educator and things, so what are the topics that are, most pressing your peers these days in terms of what things do they want to learn about?
Yeah, most of the audiologists in our community and hearing care professionals, one is continuation to support tinnitus. I think, over the pandemic and over the last couple of years of just being around more stressful conditions, people who haven't been bothered by their tinnitus all of a sudden, or tinnitus, however
Caribbean, Caribbean, I tell people you can pronounce it either way.
So the challenge is, again, education, right? Not freaking out, not Googling things and like all of a sudden the worst things that could potentially happen come up. But, seeking a medical professional like yourself on the ENT side, coming to audiology on our side, getting your hearing checked, explaining what happens with your tinnitus. Is it a sudden onset? Is there something medical we have to look at? Or is there another, side of it, which is more stress, where we can kind of support that with sound therapy? A lot of people don't have hearing loss, but have tinnitus.
Yes.
And sometimes, as I'm sure you've seen some cases, right? Sometimes the hearing loss doesn't present itself, but maybe there's some other medical things, maybe an acoustic that's slow growing, that the tinnitus is the first, thing that we have to, sort of look at or end up testing for. So at the very basic, I think number one is tinnitus. Number two is that the sort of impact of mild hearing loss. There's been so much, research and studies around the fact that with mild hearing loss untreated, how much your cognitive decline goes up by twofold.
Well, even hearing loss at the lower part of normal.
Yes, or what we call subclinical hearing loss, right? So quote unquote normal on the audiogram, but as audiology students, we would all test each other's hearing. And 20 years ago, wink, wink, I had, -5 thresholds. Now I'm in 15, 20, and I can
You
tell.
have a shift. You have a 20 dB
I have a shift. Yeah. Even though it's normal on the audiogram, I can tell in noise now. I can tell with my tolerance in noise now. It's not as long. And yet clinically, I have a normal audiogram, but that doesn't mean I don't have trouble hearing a noise or tolerating sound. So I think that, what we call hidden hearing loss in audiology or subclinical hearing loss, I think those are, more recent topics that have come up at our AAA meeting the last couple of weeks. I've attended a number of online because these patients are coming in because we've been having to wear masks.
Yes.
And when you take away half the face and you filter out voices, all of a sudden a subclinical or a deficit in your hearing becomes sort of amplified, right, with when you're wearing a mask.
Yeah. And so those are the topics that are pressing right now.
Yep. I would think those three are the top is, audiologists or hearing care professional who haven't, formally done more tinnitus. They're reaching out saying, how, this is a need in my community. Can it help me, do this? Second is, what do I do with these people who come in with normal audiograms? And obviously it's important to them. They took off of work. They wanted to come in and get an evaluation. And so, encouraging, teaching, reiterating the importance of hearing and noise testing with audiologists and hearing healthcare professionals, taking out, handicap inventories, like the hearing handicap inventory for adults. What is the, what is the percentage of detriment that's happening to my life versus your life? You and I might have the same subclinical audiogram, right? Maybe minus, we went from -5 to now 20 dB thresholds, but my effect, because I'm a mom, I'm a busy professional. I live in here in Southern California. You live in Arizona. We may have different, challenges with our quote unquote hearing levels, even though they're normal on an audiogram. So how do we look past the audiogram? Audiologically also, what do we do when there are some cognitive challenges with patients? Is there better technology that we can choose? Is there some accessories that we can encourage patients to use to increase signal to noise ratio? And looking at the bigger picture of that patient's quality of life and how do we improve it?
So when you mean for the listeners, it's enhancement microphones or things that can improve the ability for the person with the hearing technology to get what they're really trying to get. So
yeah.
What are the type of assisted listening devices people are looking at these days?
Most times, if they're a hearing device or hearing aid candidate, it is trying to improve the signal to noise ratio. So getting into a style of hearing device that has directional microphones. Sometimes people want the little itty bitty, but the little itty bitty completely in the canals only have one microphone. It can only do so much sound separation. So, doing something, evaluating the patient's hearing and noise, figuring out where do they have challenges, and then what type of technology should they be in to support that. There are other cognitive screenings that are available clinically now where we can kind of tap into what is the cognitive reserve of the patient, what is their working memory, how much tolerance do they have in noise. So at Widex, one of our researchers, Dr. Francis Cook, developed a 6-minute clinical test that hearing care professionals can do that in 6 minutes. It evaluates hearing and noise ability, working memory, and how do you tolerate noise, how long? Because based on
that's great.
Yeah. And based on that would determine, one, what level should you be in? What technology would you need to support your results? And then, more importantly, if somebody does have working memory challenges, then what other rehab do we have to introduce in order to strengthen that? Because you're not going to sit there and improve your working memory by watching YouTube. It needs to be this, engaged, sort of formal, so what we call auditory training therapy. There's some apps and some, remote type of audiological led programs. There's a program out of WASU called Amplify that they do oral rehab training virtually.
Right.
So, if you live in a little tiny town like mine in Kona, Hawaii, or you're here in Los Angeles where I live now, the fact that we have access to the internet, good headsets, computers, laptops, whatever, allows patients to not only potentially get locally their hearing treated, but if they don't have, rehab services nearby, then kind of tapping into that virtual component, where there's that really nice hybrid synergy of in-person in your local community, and then being able to tap into other virtual professionals across.
No, I think that's really great. I mean, the big thing that you're hitting on is the brain ear connection, right? That
Yeah.
we used to think, oh, it's just the audiogram and we get that better and everything will be better. But how much the brain and the ability to process the information is such an essential part of communicating effectively.
Yes, absolutely. Is it the ear thing? Is it a hearing and noise thing? Or is it really higher up? And sometimes it's all three,
I was about
right?
to say the answer is yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yes.
But I mean, getting what you can better, however you can better, right? Obviously, you need access to the sound for the other to be able to process it. If it never gets to the brain, you can't expect the brain to process what it never gets.
Exactly. And then now what we're seeing now, at least on the Widex perspective, is, being a little bit ahead of the curve. Like, how do we use, if you're going to carry a smartphone as a consumer, how do we leverage that tool and then link that to your hearing device? Because what Widex does believe in is, as much as we want to say the digital chip is going to help you hear, we know that it cannot possibly cover every single scenario that people are going to walk into, right? So 2 years later, my mom's going to go on a cruise to Alaska, and she's in that type of environment. She's probably going to go somewhere. She's not going to be able to hear the way that she wants to hear. So at Widex, we're kind of tapping into that whole listening intent dimension using AI to kind of help that patient in the moment. So when my mom takes a cruise, on Alaska in the next couple of months, she can actually launch an app on our hearing aids, and she can say, I'm in a dining room. I'm not able to follow conversations. And in seconds, we can actually harness real user data, solution driven, that could help her right then and there.
So is it, you give the input of the listening environment and based on other people's adjustments, it kind of figures out what might be the ideal adjustment?
Yep. In seconds. Yep.
That's really cool. And how does that information it gets through the smartphone to the hearing aid using the internet or something of that nature?
Correct. Yep. Our app connects to the Widex cloud. Patients have to sort of opt in to share their data if they want to. And then, at Widex Denmark, we actually collate that data, thousands and thousands of data points, and collect all of those patterns, and then give those types of solutions to patients looking for that similar listening intent. I always kind of joke and say, as a mom, my job is to hear my kids and be alert, but some days I just want to be comfortable and I just want to tune them out. But if I was wearing a hearing aid, it would always assume, right? You need to pick up the speech. You need to pick up the speech.
Theoretically, you could press buttons of what you don't want to hear.
Correct.
It might not be in the app, but that might be an enhancement to the app, right?
Correct.
What don't I want to hear?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to tune the kids out for 2 hours. I'm out.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And so, is there a user feedback about the satisfaction of the enhancement?
Yeah, so we actually look at sort of how many people use the data, how often they're using it, if they are, kind enough to share that with us. And so as we learn patterns, then we continue to update that AI, that real-time machine learning, and we continue to improve it. So we're now on our third iteration of that. What we have found, audiologists and hearing care professionals and then patients alike are saying, finally, I don't have to come in on Monday because something went wrong on Friday night. Like, we're not living in the past and then trying to fix it, today. It allows that inpatient empowerment. And to me, it takes out provider bias, right? I may think I know how to fix it, but I'm not the one with that hearing loss, and I'm not the one in that environment. and I may assume their listening intent is X, but it might be Y and Z. So instead of guessing, why not let, other real users provide some solutions for patients? And what we find is that patients will say, you know what, I tried it, and yeah, I was able to stay at the family reunion. I was able to stay at the dinner. I was able to stay at the concert that, my tickets were on hold for 2 years. So it's been a really nice, empowering feature for the patients to know, like, they can do something about it. It's not just back on the
Yeah,
HCP's lap
I
to
think just
fix
the
it.
ability to select in and of itself is a enhanced feature. Just the fact that people can have some control over something they probably oftentimes feel they have little control.
Yes, yes, yeah,
So I think that in and of itself would be great. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see where this data takes people.
for sure, for sure, for sure. And I think the other biggie, and I'm sure you see it too, is just this impact of minimal hearing loss or mild hearing loss. When you look at some of the data that has been shared with the hearing community a year and a half ago, a survey came out showing that only 10% of people who have mild hearing loss actually do something about it, or actually, owning a hearing aid. And only 50% of those with moderate hearing loss actually own a hearing device. So we're missing a lot of those people still, and they're still kind of hanging out, I don't know, treading water or what. But for some reason, the movement forward, as there are more price options to, lower the budgets for people. There's much more access points. What the article mentioned in the hearing review, Carl Strom actually wrote it, but was talking about like sound quality perhaps being the tipping point, right? If you have mild hearing loss, but you wear a hearing aid and it doesn't sound natural to you, you're probably not going to be compliant with the program and wear the device. So a couple years ago, Widex came out with a really cool program called Pure Sound. It reduces the digital signal delay. That's a half a millisecond. That gets rid of what we call the comb filter distortion associated with a lot of the RIC fittings today, and really eliminates echo, own voice echoes, tinniness, things sounding kind of weak and microphonic. And it allows a lot more people with more minimal hearing loss to be able to move forward sooner because it sounds more like their natural hearing, which is pretty cool.
I think that's important. I think the other issue is people don't know what they don't hear.
Yes.
So just
Yes.
awareness of their own hearing loss is a struggle in and of itself. And so,
Yep.
I mean, the real answer is people should get their hearing checked, right?
100%. Not only hearing check, but hearing and noise too, right? So look at the levels. Chances are a lot of them are going to maybe have, quote unquote, a normal audiogram, but hearing and noise, checking the hearing and noise ability. What happens when you tax that system? What is that? What is that level? Because you and I, even if we had the same audiogram, we may have different hearing and noise results.
Yeah, it seems the hearing and noise is a way to kind of flush out those people who are already discussing about struggling. But there are a lot of people who think they have no struggles who do, right?
Yep.
But you can further demonstrate their problem in hearing and noise, right?
Exactly.
Definitely is showing them on the spectrum. And so, one of the things you did mention is next month, May. So this will probably be, this is the end of April. So this should hopefully be, even if it's not, it's an important month. So May is a better hearing month. And so what's on tap for that in terms of the professional side and outreach side?
On top of that is just really, sort of a global push at understanding, why better speech and hearing is critical really to the human race, not only here in the US, but worldwide. By this year, they estimate that over 86 million healthcare apps will be used. And apps are good, right? Hearables, earpieces are good, but that doesn't replace good hearing hygiene. Getting that hearing checked, getting a baseline today, whatever age you are. I think most of us probably haven't gotten our hearing tested since we were in kindergarten, or maybe, going to middle school.
8th grade or something.
8th grade, right. And even that's a screening as well, right?
So comprehensive diagnostic.
Exactly. So just getting a good baseline. I think May, summertime, sort of a good time to sort of set that reminder on your smartphone. Get the hearing checked. Or the next time you get your teeth cleaned, remind yourself you got to get your ears checked as well, and just start having that as part of normal preventative medicine, if you will. And if that's the case, then people are educated. They have the time to speak with the hearing health professional. They have the time to speak with you on the ENT side if they have some ear concerns that could potentially be medically treated. And then they're within that sort of, I call that the helping bubble of you have your go-to for your hearing professionals. and then be able to be educated that way.
Yeah, the other comment I'd make about the month is not just your hearing, but others, right? And so one of the other struggles is the spouse with the spouse who has a hearing loss. And so you can use this month to go get your hearing screened with the suggestion of maybe the more resistant spouse can come and get their hearing screened. And I think it's one of the most effective ways to get or evaluated, not screened, but one of the most effective ways to get a resistant spouse into the channel to at least have a discussion about hearing loss.
Yes, for sure. For sure. And, obviously, I think, those of us who are, watching and streaming content, I mean, even on our Widex website, you can actually go on, put some headphones on and do like a screening. So, if there is, access issues for people tuning in and listening into your podcast and they say, oh gosh, the closest professional is 50 miles away and I don't drive, just Googling, Widex and Googling the hearing test area. To me is better than doing nothing, right? So do something in May. Is the take home message.
So take some sort of ownership and some sort of action.
Yes.
Regarding hearing, and so that would be the call to it. And so, are there initiatives throughout the hearing space for this? Are there other things happening, or awareness campaigns, or anything of that nature?
Yeah, there's a number of different initiatives, from a varied sort of aspects of pediatric audiology. For awareness there, because obviously for some kids, right, just because you got your hearing screened in the hospital doesn't mean when you get to kindergarten, right, still normal. Or once you're teenager, because they're under headphones, right, they're blasting their AirPods or whatever they're wearing now for long periods of time. Getting their hearing checked is good as well. So I think you'll see some push or some education around pediatric audiology that's sort of 18 and under. Then you'll see, the younger population, the World Health Organization is doing quite a bit of already push that I see on LinkedIn and Twitter, social media, kind of where those kids are. Right. And then, young adults and older, just again, another reason. It's not because you're getting older. It's just because it brings awareness for the entire month to focus on hearing and communication, because without good hearing, it's really hard to have good communication.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. I mean, the one comment I would say is your passion comes through all the time, and I think it's awesome. I really admire that. So one question I love to ask guests on the podcast is, what's your favorite sound, Jodi?
My favorite sound, and I just heard it last week, is just hearing the ocean come in. I was at home in Kona, Hawaii, and that ocean sound is very unique. It's different than the sound here in California, even though it's the same Pacific Ocean. So I would say it's the ocean waves crashing on the Kona beaches of Hawaii. Brings me back, brings me calm, and even makes me remind myself, how important hearing is and that emotional connection I want people to have.
Yeah, that is great. That is a wonderful sound. I love it too. So this is Jodi Sasaki-Miraglia. She's the Director of Education and Training for the West Region of Widex. Jodi, if people want to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
Yep, they would actually just go to the Widex website. There's a contact information there. Or locally, if they're looking to connect with me, LinkedIn is a great place to find me.
Yeah. Everybody. So this has been great. I appreciate you coming on. This has been some really great information for our listener, and I thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Mark. You too.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen Up podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get updates on future episodes.